Hey YouTubers, today we're going to be debunking the Bible, and just to show you a quick overview, we're going to be covering Bible manipulation, some of the history of Christianity, some stories in the Bible, the story of Jesus, and some of the promises in the Bible. So first off, let's start with manipulation. So this is an article from Psychologium, How to Manipulate Someone. And we're just going to see if these line up with what the Bible does. So the first technique is a fear and relief technique. And basically what you do is you create fear in this person and then you offer them the relief to escape that fear. And we see this in the Bible where it creates this idea that there's a hell that you're going to go to, and the only way to escape it is if you do exactly what you're told. You have to do what Jesus tells you, and that's the only way you can have relief from this fear. So we see this as pretty much an extreme in the Bible, and so we can definitely classify this first one as a manipulative factor that the Bible has. The second one is to learn to read someone's body language so you can use their body language against them, but with a book we can skip this one. The third one is you can never go wrong with the guilty approach. Does the Bible say you're guilty of anything? Actually, the Bible also hits this one to an extreme, saying that you are guilty of death, guilty of condemnation, and deserving of hell and eternal torture. So yes, we do see this in the Bible to a very high degree, to an extreme, I could say. The next one is play the victim card. Does the Bible claim that Jesus is a victim? Absolutely. They say that Jesus absolutely did nothing wrong and he is just the only victim in the story and it's all your fault, and this is definitely a victim card being played in the Bible. The fifth one is use your looks in your best interest. Does Jesus claim to have better looks? I mean, it just claims that Jesus is perfect in every way. He's the Son of God, holy, almighty, amazing, the perfect person. Absolutely, like, this is also done to an extreme in the Bible. Number 6, the bribery technique. If you do what you are told to do in the Bible, are you going to receive anything in return? Only eternal salvation, everlasting love, and anything you want in heaven, basically. So yeah, this is also done to an extreme. Like, the eternal ecstasy is definitely considered a bribe. So this one is also a manipulative factor in the Bible. And lastly, to prey on their feelings. It says here, last but not least, the easiest way to manipulate a person is to simply make them fall in love with you. So in the Bible, does it try to convince you to fall in love with Jesus? Does love the Lord with all your strength and mind, this is like the first and greatest commandment in the Bible, sound like this? Absolutely. This is also done to an extreme in the Bible. So this is actually, out of all 7 of these, only 6 of them applied, and all 6 of those were done to an extreme. Like, the Bible is like pretty much a perfect definition of manipulative or manipulation. So I just want you to bear in mind that what we're dealing with is something that is so manipulative and powerful that it's like, it's really extreme. So you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with anyone who's a Christian, that they're under like some heavy manipulation. Alright, so the next part I want to get into is some of the history of Christianity. And we're going to start with the Crusades. And during the Crusades, Christians killed like millions of people. Even like other Christians who weren't Christian enough for them, who were just of a different sect. They just slaughtered, butchered all these people, Greeks, Norse, like anyone who didn't share their ideology, they just massacred and killed them. There was also the Salem witch trials, which was a period where Christians gathered any people who were themed of using witchcraft or using magic and then burning them alive. And this is something that Christians said they were demon worshippers. They were possessed by demons, and they just had them slaughtered. We also have the Atlantic slave trade. Islam and Christianity played an important role in enslavement in Africa, and that had been going on for a really long time, up until even the 1900s. I think it was like in the 1950s or 60s, but Christianity played a key role in enslaving these African Americans and making them work for them for free labor. We also have the Spanish Inquisition, where it was just like another attack done by Christians to gather all these people and torture them and slaughter them. Anyone who was a heretic, who wasn't Christian enough for them, they deemed that they were deserving of torture and death, and they justified all these things. Next, we're going to go to Nazi Germany, and a lot of people say that Hitler wasn't Christian despite growing up in a Christian family. But if you look actually at Nazi Germany, it was about 100% Christian at that time. So even if you argue that Hitler wasn't a Christian, you still have to accept the fact that everyone else there was Christian, except for less than 1% who were Jews. So when we look at a picture like this, you have to realize that all these people, they're all Christians, and these are the ones who supported Hitler and supported his rise to power. They were the ones working in the concentration camps, burning people alive, killing them, and having like people starve to death. So obviously this is not like something to be overlooked just because you claim that Hitler wasn't Christian enough to be considered Christian, or whatever he claims. I mean, I know there's a lot of arguing, but anyways, moving on to the next point, we also have the KKK, which was this group in America that would go and slaughter, kill black people, and they were a Christian organization and a criminal organization nonetheless. We also have the Quiver movement, which a lot of people don't know of, which is something that takes the Bible literally word for word. There's a verse in the Bible that says, like, blessed are the ones who have like a fletching full of arrows, where the arrows are your children. So like it's basically saying you should have like as many children as possible. And these extreme Christian groups, they just constantly impregnate their wives and just have them constantly like popping out children, and they're like constantly like pregnant, and it's just so stressful for the mothers because they're just like so overburdened with children, and then the children become responsible for bringing up their other children, and the mothers go through like so much psychological trauma from this. So that's another terrible thing that's done because of this manipulative text. And then we have the Catholic Church sex scandals. So we know that just like even until recently, the Catholic Church has been raping and abusing little children, and this has been going on all across the world. So right off the bat, we can see that this is a religion that has a lot of history of abuse, a lot of history of violence, and we can see that it's there's a lot of manipulation. So I just want to bring these forward before we get into the Bible and other stuff, so kind of make you aware of some of the stuff that's going on. So let's get to some of the Bible stories. We'll start with Noah's Ark. I really like Bill Nye's segment. I know there's a lot of people don't like Bill Nye because of some of his stuff, but I feel like he really hit this one on the point, and I highly recommend you watch this video. And basically, he brings up three really good main points for why Noah's Ark makes zero sense. First off, he says that simply you have this huge boat that would never work because we have built similar boats that are smaller and have sank because they're simply too big. And scientifically speaking, the reason that these boats sink once they get so large is because wood bends when at longer lengths. So it bends like left to right, it bends up and down, and it torques clockwise and counterclockwise. And as the waves hit these boats, they just leak water and sink. So he says, like, we built boats that aren't as big as Noah's Ark, and they sank because they're made out of wood and they can't get that big. Secondly, he says that if you were to dump all these animals into one spot, why do we have like such diverse ecosystems? And how did kangaroo get from the Middle East to like Australia? Because kangaroos can't swim and sloths can't get from the Middle East over to South America. But assuming that they somehow did, and sloths went all the way up to like Alaska and then went back down through North America, through Mexico, and then into South America, you'd expect to see like some remains of those animals, and you'd expect to see like fossils, but we don't see that at all. So that the story doesn't add up. And then there's another group that actually built the ark in Kentucky, and it took them 2,500 man years of labor to build it. And that's using like cranes and screws, delivery trucks bringing in wood, and yeah, I mean, you can see like, see if I can find it.
That Christians can build a major attraction like this.
They had like all these. Here we go, like 1 cranes, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They have at least 9 cranes, and they're using like cement columns. And once again, like, this boat would never float. They're never gonna put this on the water. It's just like a tourist attraction, and it cost $100 million to build. And basically, they just built this because they would get like a bunch of like tourists, and they also got like millions of dollars of tax breaks. But that aside, like, it just is completely illogical to assume that one guy was able to build a boat with similar dimensions in like 2 years when it took 2,500 man years of labor using modern technology. Just doesn't make any sense. The next part I want to get into is the story of Jesus. And when I was reading it, there were a couple things that popped out, but the main thing that didn't make any sense to me was that Simon Peter was carrying around a sword with him. So I know there's a lot of information not provided in the Bible, so we kind of have to speculate a lot about what was happening. But we know for a fact that at the end of Jesus' mission, his disciples were still carrying around weapons, and they were still using them. And a lot of what happened in those 3 years we don't know of, but we're told that their mission was completely peaceful, that they were teaching turn the other cheek, never hurt another person. And yet at the very end of that mission, they're still carrying around weapons and using them. I mean, that's like hypocrisy at the finest. So I think that's a big red flag in the Bible, and something that raises a huge concern. The next part is when Jesus steals a donkey, and he's basically traveling to Jerusalem, and he goes and steals a donkey because he wants to ride a donkey to Jerusalem. And this is kind of a big deal, because if you stole like a piece of bread, your punishment could like have your hand cut off. So stealing a donkey would have been a huge deal. Like, that could have been someone's livelihood, and that he just stole away from a person. So obviously, like, I mean, if a group of like 12 men show up with weapons and stuff and ask for a donkey, I mean, maybe it makes sense that they just let them have it. So let's go on to some of the Bible verses. I just pulled up a webpage that has 10 powerful Bible verses, and we can immediately spot some errors. So for example, we have 2 Peter. These are promises that enable you to share and escape the world's corruption caused by human desire. We can already tell that this one is completely fake and doesn't make any sense, because we've already covered all this terrible stuff or all the corruption in Christianity. But maybe it's just saying, that you can escape the world's corruption by being the source of it. But that doesn't really make much sense. We also have this verse, Jeremiah. I have plans for you, not for disaster, to give you a future and hope. Well, we know that Jesus didn't really have a future. He kind of got killed off 3 years into his mission. But aside from that, we can look at just people today. And we have Haiti, which was pretty much dominantly Christian country that was just devastated by a hurricane, and their future was pretty much wiped away. I mean, it's just like terrible what happened here. So there's that, and I mean, it's just obvious that this is just not true as well. Let's see, jump back. I mean, there's Proverbs 133. It's down here. But all who listen to me will live in peace, untroubled by fear. I mean, America is a dominantly Christian country, and they've been at war for like almost all of their history. So we know that that's not true, and we can see that in these that it's obviously not with peace. So we can obviously that this is also a Bible verse that is not true, and obviously Christians can also be troubled and have fear of harm. So the next Bible verse I want to get into is this one that says, "For God has given us not spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of sound mind." But looking at ChristianityToday.com, there's this research that found that 1 in 4 pastors have struggled with mental illness. So when it says that for God has given us a sound mind, we can also see that 2 Timothy is also made up and fake, because we can see that even these pastors, actually it's pretty high, 25% of pastors are developing mental illness. And actually mental illness is pretty common within churches. So we can also see that many of these Bible verses are false promises that do not hold true. So the last part, I didn't put it in the overview, but the last part I want to talk about is how to switch from Christianity. And it's not that easy to just jump out of a manipulative relationship. Actually, a lot of people will undergo a lot of psychological trauma from it, and it can leave like a devastating void in someone's life. So looking at this article, it's about emotional blackmail. It's pretty much the same thing as manipulation, and it offers some techniques of how to change your lifestyle. And the first one is you have to give yourself time to think and assess the matter. The second part is you have to let go of your emotional ties. So you have to think logically and use reasoning, and you have to be like more focused on the truth instead of listening to what your emotions say. And it says to try to be an independent observer and think about the information through a third point. Like, assume that you aren't a Christian. Like, how would someone who's not a Christian feel about this? Say, like, maybe you can think about the perspectives of all the people who Christians have traumatized through history. I think through one of their perspectives, you would have a very vastly different opinion. So the next thing that I strongly recommend is you should focus on what you think life should be about, and try to determine, like, obviously you're in religion to, like, help people and you want to help, like, others, so maybe you could just, like, follow a different path that's focused on love and compassion instead of blindly following this textbook that has all these errors in it and has a lot of signs of psychological manipulation that ultimately can't keep its promises. So I appreciate your time watching, and try to use reasoning and logic, and seek the truth, and don't use your emotions for everything, but try to if you're focused on, like, the truth, then I think you'll do a lot better than people who focus on listening to their emotions. Thanks for watching.